I would like to start by telling you a story about a little boy that grew up in a country that doesn't exist anymore. I would like to start by telling you a story about a boy that grew up in East Germany. So he had a normal life. I mean, he went to school, his parents went to work, they watched TV from West Germany together, like so many families did in the mid-'80s in East Germany. But like so many other people as well, the little boy was not allowed to see things from the outside. And because he was forbidden to look beyond the Iron Curtain, he was envisioning a lot of things that was going on in the world. So many nights, when his parents thought that he was sleeping already, he grabbed in his bed his small pocket radio Mickey, much smaller than what you see here, like round about this size, and it actually didn't really work well. But when it worked, he could hear about places that he never heard before. He listened to people talking about ideas and other stories that he could not really relate to. And he connected to music that made him feel completely different. So in this place of solitude, in this cocoon under his bed, in a secure place in his room, he created an atmosphere where his mind was free, where his mind could travel to these places, where his mind could engage with these ideas that he listened to. Now, he didn't know it then, but this was the very first time he truly felt the power of ideas. The little boy was me. And it took me quite some time to realize that for an idea to grow, it only needs a small spark. And these ideas are completely liberating. I mean, they were liberating for me. This idea of there's a whole world out there helped me to cope with the conundrums of my daily life. Like, I had relatives in West Germany, but I could not visit them. I was told their life is so much more worse than mine, but when I looked at my reality, it looked very different. And I told you about these places that I heard about. I could find them on the map, but I was not allowed to go there. So just imagine the revelation, the emotional turmoil when the wall came down. And all of these ideas came back to me. They probably never even left me. But even more so now, I could follow them. I could follow my own ideas. And in order to do that, I needed to break a little cycle, a small cycle. This sense of entrepreneurship was not common for my family. But what was followed was probably something that is not that uncommon now anymore, but I lived in the United States for a while. I married a wonderful woman from Australia. Our kids are born in Cairo in Egypt. We're now living between Beirut in Lebanon and Amman in Jordan. So I've come a long way from this small boy with a bad pocket radio to someone who's still charging after ideas and trying to work with them worldwide. I have come to realize that incubating ideas is my passion. And I came to this realization because the whole last years, regardless where I was, regardless what the economic, cultural, or social context was, I always met people who also felt this power of ideas. Shaime is one of them. Shaime is a young, socially and politically engaged woman from Egypt in Cairo. I met her at some conference, and then we had some workshops together, and then we worked also together on some panels. But we never really got along that much. We never clicked because for me she was always a little bit too much. But that didn't matter because every time when we had a workshop, she stood out. She stood out with a very clear idea of a better society in Egypt. And that resonated with so many people, so they followed her. And her call for freedom, essentially the call for freedom from her was just substantiated by an idea. Jaime paid a very high price for this idea. A very small gathering, a small demonstration in the center of Cairo in January 2015. She was shot by the police. It was an accident. They didn't want to shoot her. They shot something else. But nevertheless, she got shot. And this picture of a friend of her holding her after she has been shot got viral and became yet another symbol for the atrocities of a dictatorial and tyrannic system. Very tragically, the day after, she died. She leaves behind, or left behind, a husband and a very small child. But also a huge amount of followers. Many people who still, up until today, have her idea in her head and still follow those ideas. And that is really inspiring. Someone else that inspired me over the years is Basil, the guy that you see jumping over there. Basil is a young man from Syria, around about mid-30s, which is, by the way, the worst age you can be in nowadays Syria. And Basil grew up in a society of tyranny and fear. And very early on, he told me, he had this idea of acknowledging this fear. He didn't know how to, but he wanted to acknowledge somehow this kind of fear. And eventually he fled from Syria, and everything he did afterwards was just a means to the end of making this idea, bringing that idea to life, that he wanted to acknowledge fear. So when I met him in February 2017 in the small camp, so he ended up in a very small camp in the north of Lebanon, which is one of the poorest areas you can think of. When I met him there, his idea was still very vague. There was not much that he could say. But talking to him, and everybody had the same experience when they talked to him, talking to him, you could feel the passion that he had in order to bring this idea to life. To make a long story short, he was very active in the community over there. He received a scholarship. He eventually studied in Germany. He learned the German language. He created an exhibition which traveled the country. And finally, he wrote a book, The Fabric of Fear. These are just two examples of the many people I met whose ideas were so strong that their own life didn't even matter anymore. And that was so inspiring. But an idea will always remain an idea if we don't put it into practice. And here my 20-plus years of working probably come into play as well. I mean, I worked in the private sector and the public sector and the NGO sector. And everywhere where I wanted to experience with ideas, where I wanted to try out new things, I was restricted by structures, which is normal. I mean, we talked about it even earlier. It's normal. The moment there is an organization, you need a structure. I actually like structures. But it depends on how much freedom they give you to explore. Sometimes structures are so narrow that even your thinking is limited. And I have a track record of making the best out of the structures that are surrounding me. But I have seen in the last many years, many ideas not just only failing, but also not even seeing the light because of the structures and the hinderings that come with it. So I needed to make another decision. I needed to decide, do I want to stay in the structure or do I want to support really what I'm passionate about, incubating ideas. So I drew a line, I got rid of all my jobs, got rid of the security of the jobs, the civil servantship, all these things, and founded an idea department with a partner, where we have a platform to incubate ideas within structures. And this is something where we're doing this for many years now, and to deal with something so lucid, so intangible, like ideas. I mean, we saw it earlier. Jaime, very clear idea, very clear way ahead. Basel, completely open. You need some sort of a system for it, and we developed the system. It's a systematic approach to deal with ideas. It's not rocket science. In the end of the day, it's something really simple, but it helps us to deal with something so intangible like ideas. And in the end of the day, we call it that 3 steps plus 1 to bring an idea to life. First step is writing a pitch. Now that's more than just one of these fancy sentences. It's also not necessarily the elevator pitch that we know from the startup ecosystem. It's the essence of the idea. It's the understanding of what it actually is that you want to do, putting it into words. Because the moment you find the words for it, you find the right approach for it. You find the goal for it. You find out what the achievement can be. And once you have that, you can come to the next step, and that is building a strategy. A proper strategic plan generates direction. It helps us to clear the mind and to see the road ahead, to know what we have to do and who to employ as well. As an idea department, we subscribe to the ideology of open strategy, which is basically a very inclusive way of bringing many players together, more creativity together. That means bringing external people in, but also changing the culture and the mindset of an organization that, for example, a strategy doesn't have to be written by a CEO alone. Because once you have that, you need everything to execute, everything and everyone. Your resources should go only towards this. And there, it doesn't matter what kind of resources you have. If someone else has more, it doesn't matter. Same resources, different people, different outcomes. Very simple. So whatever you have, you need to put it towards your execution to bring your idea to life. And here, the +1 is becoming important. The +1, I mean, like it's like your general dinner party. You're allowed to bring a +1. The +1 is super important. If you bring the wrong one, it can crash the whole party. If it's the right one, it can elevate it. Same here. +1 is super important. In our case, it's the community. It's your community. You need to employ everyone in your community. Let it be mental support, financial support, content support, whatever it is, it needs to be going in this one direction. Again, this is not rocket science, but it helps us to change the mindset within structures which are very hard. Like, we don't want to change the world, but we need to find a way to outsource creative thinking. We need to find a way to find a platform to actually not kill ideas right away. Because how is the world looking like without ideas? Terrible thought. And there's so much out there. I mean, an idea doesn't have to be the next big world-changing thing. It's a spark. It's a spark that influences the person next to you, maybe even the person sitting next to you right now. And it can be coming through a crackling small pocket radio. But remember, somewhere out there is this small boy listening to it, ready to absorb any kind of idea. Because this is the spark that changes the world. And this is the spark that shapes the future. Thank you.